Every sneaker you own that gets compliments was, at some point, a shape nobody had seen before. And the first reaction to a shape nobody has seen is almost never genius. It's confusion. It's laughter. It's a shoe sitting untouched while the safe design next to it sells out. This video is about the ones that survived that, sneakers the market rejected on sight, or that designers had to fight their own companies to release that came back years later as untouchable classics. One of them was called Ugly so loudly that the Wall Street Journal, GQ, and the New York Times all printed it, while the designer insists he never made an ugly shoe at all. Here's the part that should change how you shop. The exact thing that got each of these shoes called ugly is the exact thing that made them legendary. The one everyone gets wrong. Nike Air Foamposite One. 1997. Start with the famous one, because everybody has the timeline backwards. Ask about the Foamposite today, and you'll hear about long lines and massive resale values. Here's what almost nobody mentions. The Air Foamposite One was a commercial failure when it came out. Not a slow starter, a failure. It released at a price that made people wince, in exactly one colorway, looking like nothing any human being had ever worn on a basketball court. And it did not sell. Nike had spent 3 years developing a process everyone told them was impossible. Designers inside Nike, manufacturers in China, all saying it couldn't be done. Liquid polyurethane poured into a mold, forming one seamless shell with no stitched panels anywhere. Eric Avar, the designer, said the project had no brief at all. Pure experimentation. And what came out looked like a beetle, something grown rather than manufactured. In 1997, on a wall next to leather and mesh basketball shoes, it didn't read as futuristic. It read as wrong. The shoe didn't return to stores until its 10th anniversary, 10 years. By then, a generation had grown up seeing Penny Hardaway in them, and the shape had stopped being alien. Same mold, same shell, same everything. The only variable that changed was how long people had been looking at it. If you're buying, the Royal is the one that matters, the only original colorway, which makes it the only Foamposite that can be a true retro. And no, the shell doesn't break in. It either fits or it doesn't, so try before you buy. On used pairs, check the flex point for stress cracking. That damage is permanent. Remember that shell? It comes back twice before this video ends. The true ghosts. Reebok Instapump Fury. 1994. If the Foamposite was liquid molded, the Instapump Fury was stripped raw. Stephen Smith, inside a unit called Reebok Advanced Concepts, took the pump technology and turned it inside out. He made the inflatable bladder the exoskeleton. If the technology was the reason to buy the shoe, why was it hiding? Then he removed the laces entirely. Not reduced them. Removed them. A graphite carbon plate split the midsole in half, leaving air where the art should be. Then came the colors. The original Citroen colorway was inspired by two things: the Sex Pistols debut album cover, and a New Balance running shoe from 1978 that Smith had loved since he was young. Reebok's sales teams begged for something safe. Grays, blues, Smith refused. He wanted the shoe to scream from the shelf. Reebok hedged and released a tamer colorway alongside it. Nobody remembers that one. The loud one ended up in the Design Museum in London. If you're buying, re-releases are affordable, and it's one of the few genuinely comfortable shoes here. Buy the Citroen. 30 years proved nobody wants the safe version. And test the pump before you pay. An Instapump that won't hold air has no lacing system at all. Nike Air Rift. 1996. 2 years after the Fury, Nike released something even stranger. Kip Buck, an ultra-distance runner inside Nike, studied elite Kenyan athletes who trained barefoot in the Great Rift Valley and concluded natural motion required the big toe to move independently, so they split the toe box down the middle. A tabby design on a running sneaker secured with mid-foot straps and no laces. The name came from the valley. The original black, green, and red colorway is the Kenyan flag. To runners, it was a mechanical revelation. To a casual shopper in 1996, it looked like a split hoof. People hunting Air Max and Air Jordans wanted nothing to do with it. Then it found the one place on Earth where a split-toe shoe wasn't strange at all. In Japan, the Rift took off, because it looked like tabi, the traditional split-toe footwear people there had worn for centuries. What read as bizarre in America read as familiar in Harajuku. That's this video's argument proven geographically instead of chronologically. Same year, same shoe, two countries, opposite verdicts. Nike re-released it in 2015. It's now a coveted lifestyle silhouette with collaborations still arriving 30 years later. If you're buying, the Kenya colorway is the original and the one with the story. Try it on first. The split toe is divisive, and this shoe demands bare feet or tabby socks. Air Jordan 15. 1999. If the Rift was built for running efficiency, the Air Jordan 15 was built off an experimental aircraft. Tinker Hatfield drew from the X-15, a rocket-powered plane built to fly at the edge of space. Woven upper, dynamic fit sleeve, and a long, jutting tongue that protruded past the laces like nothing in basketball footwear before or since. That tongue is the whole story. It arrived in 1999, the year after Jordan's last shot with the Bulls, with no Jordan on the floor to make anyone forgive it. Then the audience moved. A new generation arrived with no memory of 1999 and no fixed idea of what an Air Jordan should look like. Nothing about the shoe changed. The tongue is exactly as long as it always was. Only the audience moved. If you're buying, the Flint is the collector pick and the most wearable version. One of the last undervalued numbered Jordans precisely because 2 decades of mockery suppressed the price. Avoid the cheap retro makeups. The woven upper is the entire character of this shoe. The escape, the one that never needed forgiving. Nike Air Max 95. 1995. Here's where the list gets interesting because one shoe belongs in this video by every visual measure and doesn't belong in it at all. Sergio Lozano designed the Air Max 95 around human anatomy, a spine running down the outsole. Lacing that mimics a rib cage, layered panels like muscle fiber, and the first 4-foot Air units the line ever carried. By the standards of every other shoe here, it should have been rejected on sight. It looked like a dissection. It wasn't. The Air Max 95 was a hit almost immediately, and in Japan it became a phenomenon. So why is it here? Because the resistance was real. It just came from inside the building. Nike executives objected to the black midsole. The brand didn't put black soles on flagship runners. Lozano argued a black sole would hide dirt and keep the shoe looking clean after hard miles. He fought for it. They gave in. That black sole is now one of the most copied details in footwear history. And that's the pattern hiding under this entire video. Nike's own manufacturers said the Foamposite couldn't be built. Over and over, the last people convinced weren't customers. Nobody had seen it yet. Which raises the obvious question. Why did sneakers suddenly begin looking like machinery? One shoe, one window. Hold on to that. It's the ending of this video. The origin. Nike Air Max 1. 1987. Nike had air cushioning years before the Air Max 1. It came from an aerospace engineer named Marion Franklin Rudy, and Nike had been putting it inside running shoes since the late 70s. Sealed in the midsole. Completely invisible. Nobody argued about it because nobody could see it. Then Tinker Hatfield did something radical. He cut a window into the midsole so you could see the air. The Centre Pompidou in Paris, an art museum designed inside out, with the pipes, ducts, and structural skeleton mounted on the outside instead of hidden in the walls. Architects called it a landmark. Tinker looked at it and decided a shoe could do the same thing. Show people the machinery. He has described Air Max as a renegade project with no marketing brief attached to it. Nobody asked for this shoe. It was one designer deciding that the honest thing to do with good technology was to expose it. That single decision created every argument in this video. Because from 1987 onward, visible tech, exposed structure, shells and windows and bubbles and bladders. If you're buying, the Air Max 1 is the safest sneaker here and stays in near continuous production, so prices stay sane. The version worth knowing is the Big Bubble, Nike's recreation of Tinker's original sketch, with a larger air unit than standard releases carried for decades, the Forever List. Once exposed technology became a design language, the strangeness stopped being an accident. Designers started reaching for it on purpose. Nike Air Monarch. 2002. The least glamorous shoe in this video, and the most important one for what came after it. The Monarch was never designed to be interesting. It was designed to be adequate. Thick foam midsole, wide fit, max air in the heel, $65. For years, it was the definitive dad shoe. Not a compliment, a description. Then, fashion exhausted itself on sleek silhouettes, and the same proportions that made the Monarch invisible made it interesting. In January 2019, London designer Martine Rose released a Monarch collaboration at $250, roughly 4 times retail, the most expensive Air Monarch ever made. She built it by fitting a size 18 upper onto size 9 tooling. Rose said they were told repeatedly it couldn't be done. 2 details make this perfect. Part of the collection pre-launched on Craigslist, not Senkar's Craigslist. And when Rose described the construction, she said the only shoe she knew of with anything comparable was the Nike Foamposite. The dad shoe nobody wanted and the alien shell nobody bought. If you're buying, the standard Monarch is the best value in this video. $65 comfortable, 0 hype tax. Buy the plain one to wear. Buy the Rose collab only if the joke is worth the money. Balenciaga Triple S, 2017. And here's the one where you don't have to take my word for any of it because the press wrote it down. When the Triple S hit the runway in January 2017 and went on sale that September, the reviews were brutal and specific. The Wall Street Journal called it ugly. GQ called it a chunky, bulky, overdone take on a dad sneaker. The New York Times called them homely clompers. Inside Balenciaga, executives were skeptical before it launched. Look at what it is. Demna Gvasalia, working with footwear designer David Tournier-Bossiel, took molds from 3 shoes, running, basketball, and track. That's what the name means. The S stands for sole. There are 3 of them. Then they distressed the materials, so a $900 sneaker arrived looking pre-worn. It sold out. Then it rewired the industry. And here's the twist. Demna has said flatly that ugly was never the plan. In his telling, it was a proportional exercise in footwear, not a gimmick about what's ugly and what isn't. His words. He's not part of ugly fashion, and he never liked ugly things. He was working at a scale nobody had tried. Everyone else supplied the word. If you're buying, this is the one I'd be careful with. $900 at launch, a market saturated with fakes, and unlike the Foamposite, you're buying a fashion object rather than engineering. Use a platform that authenticates, and buy it to wear now, not to hold. Adidas Yeezy Boost 700 Wave Runner, 2017. That same year, Steven Smith took the chunky aesthetic back to mainstream culture. The Wave Runner refined the bulky dad shoe shape, layered panels in grays and teals, proportions that would have been a punchline in any previous decade. It was a commercial hit immediately and stayed relevant for years, which almost nothing in fashion footwear manages. Dad shoe stopped being an insult and became a permanent category every major brand now competes in. If you're buying, know you're buying a design moment rather than engineering. Look cycle. The 700 has held up because it was first and it's well made. Just be honest about which you're paying for. Nike Air Foamposite One Galaxy, 2012. Which brings us back to where we started. 15 years after the original Foamposite sat untouched on shelves, Nike printed a Galaxy graphic across the exact same liquid mold and added a glow-in-the-dark sole. The reaction was the precise inverse of the original launch. Riots outside shopping malls, police shutting down stores, resale prices on national news broadcasts. Not sneaker media, actual news. The shell was identical to 1997. Only the world around it had. If you're buying, the Galaxy is a hype artifact, not a sleeper. The 2012 pairs carry a permanent Riot premium. If you want the Foamposite story rather than the Foamposite moment, go back to the Royal. The shoe nobody wanted, at a fraction of the price of the shoe everybody fought over. One thread ties this lineup together. The Reebok Instapump Fury, 1994. The laceless shoe Reebok's own sales team tried to tone down. The Adidas Yeezy Boost 700 2017. The shoe that made the world want chunky sneakers. Same designer, Steven Smith. 23 years apart. A career spent being right a decade early. And here's the ending I told you to hold on to. Tinker cut that window into the Air Max one because of a building people called an eyesore. Today, the Center Pompidou is a landmark. Every shoe here descends from that decision. And everyone repeated the building's story. Because ugly is rarely a judgment about quality. It's a measurement of familiarity. The Foamposite shell didn't improve between 1997 and 2012. The Air Jordan 15's tongue didn't get shorter. So the question isn't whether a sneaker looks good to you today. It's whether it looks like anything else. Because the safe shoe next to it, the one nobody argues about, is the one nobody will be talking about in 20 years. The arguments are where the classics come from.